Hello again, and welcome to this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent T. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs as we chat with the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting. My guest today is none other than Roy Huntington, and we're going to talk about something that you're probably familiar with if you read our magazines, and that is the concept of the Perfect Packin Pistol. That phrase was coined by John Taffin, and he talks about it quite a bit, but nobody's ever really exactly defined what a perfect packin pistol is. So Roy Huntington and I are going to talk about that and kind of give our own version of what we think the perfect packin pistol really is. Before we do that, of course, make sure you like and subscribe. That really helps what we're doing here on YouTube, and that makes you part of the Guns Magazine family. So here we go, Roy Huntington and I talking about the Perfect Packin Pistol. Well, good morning, Roy.
Good morning. I have my first brew of the day here.
This is about number 10. This is tea right now, but I will apologize out of the gate. Last 2 weeks have been reboots because first I had a death in the family, and then I promptly got sick. And when we were getting ready to hit record today, Roy's gacking and hacking, so I've taken all kinds of drugs and stuff, but probably through the miracle of editing, you won't notice any of that, but I'm sure we could use our coughing fits from the outtake series. But anyway, if I sound a little rough or Roy's a little scratchy too, we just got that crud going around. So anyway, I'm back among the living and starting to trend better, so that's a good thing. And we were talking, and I said, Roy, we got to get together and do a podcast. So here we are, and we came up with, I think, it's actually shocking we've never discussed this, and it's the whole idea of perfect packing pistol. And if you read Handgunner or Guns Magazine, you see that quite a bit by our beloved John Taffin. So, Roy, you kind of were there when that all started. Talk about the Perfect Packin Pistol.
I know, as editors, we groan because, we get an article from John, and it's, yet every gun is a perfect packing pistol.
Yeah.
It could be a 6.5-inch Model 29, or it could be a North American Arms or something. But I think in John's opinion, in his mind, it's a holster gun you would take when you're in the woods, as they used to say, woods loafing, right? So you're walking around in the woods and you're doing whatever it is you do when you're walking around in the woods. And what pistol would you carry with you in a traditional Western style holster, more than likely, that isn't too big, isn't too small, is accurate enough that you could plink with it, but also of a staunch enough caliber that you could defend yourself against a charging gray squirrel. So that was the whole deal about perfect packing pistol. And so, of course, then ever since then, anytime John reviews a gun of any kind, he sort of talks about, is this a perfect packing pistol or not? And so over the last 25 years or so, that's, I've kind of gotten to a point to where I have my perfect packing pistol idea. And actually, if I had to decide today, let me get it, I got it right here. My perfect packing pistol would be this, and this is a Taylor's & Company Uberti. It's called their Stallion. It's a 7/8 size single action. It's in 38 special, and I put adjustable sights on it and new sights. But 3.5-inch barrel. It's light. It's small. It's a caliber that's substantial enough that it will protect you if you need to. But if you load it with wad cutters and other things, you could, shoot squirrels or, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
And it looks right at home. Like, I have a flap cross draw holster for it now. And so, see, I think in everyone's mind, this is a perfect packing pistol. And I think you could extend that to maybe a 4-inch K-frame revolver in some caliber. I think 32 Magnum, 327 Federal, 38 Special, that kind of stuff. But having said that, as we talked about before, well, if you're in Alaska and you're salmon fishing and bears are a real threat, well, then my idea is a silly idea for a Perfect Packin Pistol.
Yeah.
But I almost think that that's a different category. There's what's a defensive pistol when you're hunting by dangerous game versus what's just like a fun gun that you're going to carry around with you. Well, Brent, you spent a lot of time in the woods. What have been your Perfect Packin Pistols?
Well, I knew you were going to ask that question, and my answer is pretty dull, actually. Since I spend the majority of my time, not all of it, but the majority of my time in the eastern U.S., even carrying open is kind of looked at sideways. That's why I enjoy when I get out west that actually carrying a sidearm openly. I've got lots of different things I do, but really, when I'm out hunting, fishing, traversing, really the only thing I worry about is the most dangerous game, which is two-legged. So I tend to just carry my whatever I'm carrying at the moment. Now, if I'm in bear country, which my area where I live in the upper or Midwest, not a lot of bear around. But if I go someplace either farther north or farther south or certainly west, I will tend to upsize to maybe a more full size, something like a 10 millimeter. I've not spent a whole bunch of time in grizzly territory, so that's not really on my radar, but I kind of just end up usually carrying a semi-auto for self-defense purposes, and if I got to shoot a squirrel, I generally got a rifle along or a rabbit or something like that. So I'm really not the guy to, I guess, be talking about the Perfect Packin Pistol, but that's what it is for me. Whatever I've got on my hip when I leave the house is probably what I'm carrying.
Well, I think and that's a very good point. I think, Taffin lives in Idaho, so he's always got a cowboy hat screwed on his head. And so I think in his mind, it's hey, I'm walking in the high desert here, and, he likes to have a holster gun, right? So, I do. And I think for him, you kind of any of that 4-inch, 32 to 41 Magnum. It was great. He had a friend, Gallagher. I forget Gallagher's first name. He was a custom pistol smith, and he used to convert Ruger single sixes to different calibers, and he made a 5-shot. He called it like a 41 special or something. And it was this, I don't know, some magical thing they invented between them. But Taffin was the Perfect Packin Pistol, right? But if you think about it, it probably was, because it was I don't know what they were, probably a 150 grain bullet at 900 feet per second. And in a Ruger single 6 size gun. Right?
Yeah.
So, that's pretty good, because you could take care of, as you say, two-legged friends. You could, probably maybe shoot a deer with it if you really wanted to, but it's kind of not about that, I've heard from a lot of readers through the years, and you have too. They all want to tell you what their Perfect Packin Pistol is. And the thing that I have learned is that really everybody has their own version of a perfect package,
Exactly.
The trappers love Ruger, 22 auto pistols. A lot of them don't carry rifles because they're dragging traps around with them and stuff. Deer hunters tend to also use a lot of 22 pistols for the old coup de grace of a down deer or something like that. In some parts of the world, like where Dave Workman is, I guess you're allowed to hunt, I think it's grouse with a pistol. And so he actually talks about that. He's got some little accurized, Ruger standard auto kind of a gun that he actually goes grouse hunting with it, so for him, that's his Perfect Packin Pistol. But I think like anything, though, it's more of it's like if we did a podcast on if you could only have one gun, what would it be? People like that exercise, they want, because they'll argue with you, they'll go to blows with you, actually, right?
They will.
You stupid idiot, a 357, and I think this is almost kind of one of those things. But I have to say, at least for me, with my thinking after 45 years in the business and 25 years of editing John Taffin articles, there does seem to be a common theme. And the common theme is a smaller sized single action, not a 22, but more like 327, 38, 357, 41, 44 special seems to qualify for some reason. Another in this category would be like a Freedom Arms Model 97, their small size 357. Because for the reality, a lot of people talk about that. It's like the ones who say, well, if the world's coming to an end, I'm going to go to the woods. It's like, no, you know what? You have never spent a night on the forest floor with the ticks and the ants.
Exactly.
And getting eaten by mosquitoes. I mean, some of you have, and that's great. And if you're ready to do that, go do it. But the people, when they're sitting at home in their easy chair and they're imagining their perfect packing pistol, and they say, well, I would never do it with anything less than a 6.5-inch Smith & Wesson Model 29 44 Magnum. Well, I always ask, have you ever actually carried one of those around all day? I mean, it gets really heavy. I think we covered it not too long ago in a podcast about what do you really carry? Why are, I think it was carrying guns is a pain in the neck, or, we did that podcast. I think
the title was Carrying a Gun Sucks.
Because
it does.
Because it does, yeah. And it's like, I mean, 99% of the time when I'm out around on my property, and we have pigs, and we technically are getting bears now, and we're, but I mean, nothing real serious. Most of them would run away if you wave your arms. Like you, I'm mostly concerned about bad guys and armadillos and raccoons and coyotes. Those are my arch nemesis around here. But I generally have a Ruger LCP Max 380 in my pocket, and there has certainly been an armadillo or three who have fallen prey, to my eagle eye with that.
Yeah.
But generally, it's like carrying a gun is a pain in the neck. And if I was woods walking, loafing, doing whatever magical thing you do with a perfect packing pistol, this is probably would max it out for me, and I'd be eyeballing one of those little Scandium, Charter Arms or something,
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny because, I'll be on a horseback hunt here in a couple of months out west, and you can be darn sure that I'll have my my Western rig with my custom Vaquero in 45 Colt, and for a guy from the East, that's just the coolest thing. And I think that's relatable though, because frankly, I think a perfect packin' pistol is really, and this will inspire some probably heated remarks, but it's an emotional choice. I mean, when you get right down to it, if you're talking, for X type of usage, there's a whole lot of different possibilities that would work pretty good. But when people get so focused on, you should only use the 44 special for this in a 4-inch whatever, typically it's because that's what they learn to shoot with, or they have one that they really like, or for some other reason. That's what really amazes me about shooters in general. When you ask them why they favor a certain thing, whatever it is, a gun caliber, when you get right down to it, it comes back to it's what they like. But the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's when people start arguing as fact, instead of just saying, well, I like this gun. And I think that's what we've always tried to do. There's nothing wrong with that. If you prefer that gun, you believe in that gun, you trust that gun, good for you. I'm happy you have that relationship with a firearm or a caliber.
Well, and the other thing to carry that theme on is that just because someone doesn't agree with it doesn't mean you have to be a butthead about it.
Yeah.
Well, you're stupid. That's 44 is too heavy. You're stupid. Yeah. I will honestly say that the perfect packing pistol isn't a perfect packing pistol. If you're really woods loafing, whatever that is, which I still don't quite know what that is, to me, like a little folding stock Ruger 1022 slung over your shoulder, really, honestly, makes much more sense, than any pistol. And It's like I showed an old Garcia, I think it was called a Bronco. It was a survival rifle they made for a while. Just barely enough to be a gun. It's like if you took everything off that wasn't a gun, this is what you end up with. This skeleton stock, bare minimum everything. And, so I did a video on that, and there was a lot of people that waded in. That's it. One guy said Garcia was a fishing company, He said, if you bought one of their fancy $150 fishing reels in the late 70s, they gave you one of these rifles as part. Yeah, because I think MSRP on them was like $19.95. They weren't very expensive. Yeah. But, you could strap that on a pack frame and have no idea you even have it there. And yet you've got an accurate .22 rifle, which would solve 99.9% of all the problems we're talking about. But as you say, it's emotional because on the one hand, it's like people say, why don't we just make basic pickup trucks with roll-down windows and a 4-speed transmission and a bench seat and nothing, just all you need, right?
Yeah.
Well, they would if people would actually wanted those, But the reality is they really don't. And so that's back to what you were saying about objectively, you could fill out a form and what caliber should it be? And if you look at it and say objectively, what do I need? It would probably be like a single shot 22 aluminum frame pistol with a 6-inch barrel. Because 99.999% of the times, that's probably really all you need. It's like, I don't know, all these people, they say, well, I always carry shot cartridges when I walk on the woods for snakes. I step over them. I mean, or it's like when people say, well, there's a rattlesnake right at your feet. Well, step back.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you're talking about bear defense, and I just saw a great video. We may have to talk about it one of these days if I can find it again. I've seen lots of charging grizzlies and brown bears, and that's scary. This was some guys fishing out of a drift boat on a very small stream, and it upset a grizzly to where it burst out of the woods and was charging across the stream that fast. So I thought, if I was out in a boat, I know, wading's a different deal, but in a boat, you wouldn't think the grizzly, you'd have to defend yourself against a grizzly. And this thing was on them so fast that, that's a different deal. And at that point, you really do want a big rifle, but it makes it untenable when there's 3 fishermen in a boat. So this guy pulled his 44, and fortunately the bear bluffed and stopped right before he got him, because frankly, it stopped so close, I don't think even a 44 would have made a lot of difference. He still had a lot of get up and go, even if you'd put a bunch of rounds into him. But my point being, I've spent a lot of time around black bears. I've surprised black bears. It's like a lot of different things, and I'm using grizzly as an outlier. But 99.99% of the time on other stuff, you're not going to have to do like the old outdoor magazines and shoot that black bear off of you, or shoot the wild cat, the bobcat that's attacking you. If it's attacking you, it's probably rabid, and that's a different problem. But for the most part, I've spent 60 years in the outdoors in a lot of different places, and because I've used good wood sense, I haven't had to shoot a lot of snakes. The ones I shot basically because they upset me as opposed to they needed to be shot, and never had a problem with bears. And I had some close encounters, but and I was prepared for it with guns, but I didn't have to go to guns. So that was kind of my point, that we always, and it relates back to what you were saying. We go back to, well, if I have to shoot the wounded charging deer. No, it's just you want to carry that pistol. And there's nothing wrong with that. So that was kind of my point.
It's true. Well, then I think we can safely say that, is there a perfect packing pistol? No. But we could say, is there a perfect packing pistol for you and or your needs?
Exactly.
And then, yes, whatever that may be. The guy in that boat wanted a 50 AE full auto,
belt-fed crew serve
gun, that's interesting, because I know, Taffin, of course, loves single actions, and there's a lot of the guys go up there to the big bad bear country, and they carry single action 454s and stuff like that. But I read one where a guy ended up, it was that situation, he was jumped and he was down on the ground and he got 1 or 2 shots off, but he was trying to manipulate his single action. And, while a bear was like eating at his head.
Yeah.
And so that is one thing that made me think that maybe double action revolvers might be a better idea in the situation. Yeah. So
you can always make it single action, but
yeah. So Perfect Packin Pistol. Well, okay, you ready? I'll throw the gauntlet down. I have mine, So what's your Perfect Packin Pistol? Post a comment, tell us what it is and why it is, and then we'll tell you you're wrong.
No, we won't. But I did, before we go, it was funny when we were sitting here talking. I have, at one point in my life, you know what my Perfect Packin Pistol was?
God only knows.
A Louisville Slugger.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I called it the Rat Bat. And I think I've alluded to this before. When I was a kid, probably middle school, maybe early high school, I wanted to be a trapper. So I grew up in the suburbs, and there's a nice big golf course, a very high-end golf course, just not too far from my house. So I bought traps at the hardware store, and I learned by trial and error. But I also realized that a young, I'd be probably 13, 14, young man padding through the streets of town and hang out on the golf course with a rifle or even a pistol would probably draw some stares, even at that point in the 1970s. So I came up, actually I told my dad, because he had run a trap line on this when he was a kid on this same creek years before, and before anything was developed. And he didn't have a gun, so he carried a baseball bat and bludgeoned the muskrats into oblivion. So I took one of my Louisville Sluggers and customized it, and that was called the Rat Bat. And even when we were playing Little League, we still used the Rat Bat, and it had many confirmed kills. But at that point, that was all I could or should have been carrying. So, I don't know what, 50 ounces of kiln-dried hickory made in Louisville, Kentucky. That's what it took for me.
Well, that's interesting. You're thinking outside of the box, but you're exactly right. I mean, if I'm out and about, I don't really woods loaf. Usually I'm in the woods here because I have something I have to do, But I generally will have I have this walking stick thing with a poker on the end of it. I'll just generally have that with me because, you want to poke underneath a log and see what's in there or knock some cobwebs out in front of you or something like that. So that's actually a very good point, which, of course, now we have to find a new columnist, and he has to start writing about what's the perfect packing stick.
Actually, that's a great topic. I don't know that it's gun related, but I'm a big fan of hiking sticks, and I've got all kinds, and we have to talk about that one day. So,
actually, that's a good point, because even with shooters now, they have those monopods.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I have. It's a monopod. You can shoot from it if you want to, but the other end has a poker, and it's just all around pretty handy. So, okay, another show.
Well, that's drawing a close on this one, on the Perfect Packin Pistol. And as Roy said, leave us a comment down there or reach me at editor@Guns Magazine and tell me what your Perfect Packin Pistol is. And Roy, thanks for joining us once again.
My pleasure.
It's great talking to Roy Huntington and getting his thoughts on what makes a Perfect Packin Pistol. And I'd be interested to hear what you think your Perfect Packin Pistol is. Before we go, I always ask this, but there's a few of you who haven't. Please make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That helps us support what we're doing here and makes you part of the Guns Magazine family. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. On behalf of everybody who works so hard here at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent T reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.